We're live.
Uy, an error occurred. Yan. Aba ka naman.
Uh,
Share.
share na din ako sa Facebook. May bagong post ba for the live one?
Yung video pa rin. I-watch party mo na para masaya.
Paano yun?
Ito, yung video. Okay, hello guys, we're getting live, or we're going live in a few minutes. So for those who are already watching us, you can actually help the community grow and reach more people by doing a watch party. So dun sa in the settings part, or I think you can share it or click on make watch party so that your friends and in one of the groups that you're part of, so that they can also see the video. So again, today we will have introduction to iOS development, and Zonily, who has kindly joined us today, will talk about Swift and SwiftUI. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Start na ba ako?
Later na. But let's just wait for some of the guys to join. So when if you want to share the video, just to help more people to watch this, you can click on share and then click on start a watch party, and then you can share it to maybe some of the groups that you've joined in the past. So let me try to look for. Okay, I'm gonna watch party with Flutter Philippines community, and hopefully the admins will approve it.
Admin ako dun eh.
Approve mo na rin.
Hindi, naka-open siya for all yung posting.
Ay, right, okay.
I-remove na lang namin kapag hindi siya akma.
Relevant. Okay. Yeah, so I think last time it was very interesting. It was a very interesting talk, and well, out of our past events, we've had the most number of viewers. I think at some point we were at 150, which just show that there's really a lot of people out there who are looking for things like this. And what's good later is what's exciting about today's episode is that Zonally will share to us an exciting event that everyone can be part of. It's actually a free event, so for those of you who would like to learn uh, iOS development further, then stay tuned, and Zonally later will talk about that in details, how you can be part of it, and the communities that you can join, so that you will have you'll be surrounded by supportive people who only wants the best for their developers.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you today, Z?
I'm very accommodating person right now.
Accommodating. Yeah. Yeah, so also we get to see naman din, you get to see how a mobile developer's room looks like. So yeah, medyo maganda yung setup ni Z ngayon eh. May RGB keyboard ka ba? Ay, nice. Yeah, syempre hindi ka developer kung hindi ka
Kailangan niya,
mechanical keyboard.
it's a need.
Yeah, it's a need. Iba talaga yung feeling pag ano eh. I don't have the RGB keyboard. I don't think I have the credentials for an RGB or a mechanical keyboard.
Pwede
Pero
yan for gaming.
yeah, for gaming, yeah, I know. Pero apat na keys lang yung pipindutin mo, then you're gonna pay you're gonna pay 3,000 pesos for a mechanical keyboard. Yeah, but it's really nice for coding as well kasi yung tip tap the sound, may terms na
Ganda.
dun eh. Yeah. You
ASMR.
oh yeah, ASMR ng keyboard. So para legit na hacker boy. When did you buy that? When did you get your keyboard Z?
I bought this last year around March yata. And so far, daily driver ko siya. Hindi ko na siya papalitan pa. Sa ngayon,
Mhm.
ganda siya.
When was the when was the last time that you're using a Mac, right?
Mhm.
Uh, how does it work? Kasi usually the keys are different. How do you go about that?
Actually, you can remap sa gamit ko. So, I'm using Ducky12 TKL. And
Mm-hmm.
pwede siyang i-remap like ang keys na magagamit niya is for MacBook. So, lahat ng like function keys ng MacBook like sa brightness ng screen, it happens, it works. Paano ko ba ito ipapakita? Hindi ko na siya mapapakita. So,
Yeah,
if
that's
you're
okay.
not like using a mechanical keyboard na pwedeng ma-remap, you can use Carabiner. It's an
Mm-hmm.
application that you can remap keys within your Mac. So, for
Ah.
example, the gamit mo is unremappable. You can just remap it using the app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nice kasi well, I don't think there's or I haven't seen a keyboard, a mechanical keyboard for Mac, um, as far as I know, but there's probably one out there, hindi ko lang siya nakakita.
Yeah.
Kasi just recently my laptop was giving up on me, so the keyboard was not working anymore. So I had to go to the Apple store sa Power Mac, and the keyboards were like yung magic keyboard. That's what we call it,
6,000.
diba? 6,000 pesos. Oh my god. So sabi ko, pagpapayos ko to, it's more expensive. I'm gonna buy a magic keyboard, and that's gonna be 6,000. Bili na lang ako ng Logitech. Tapos
Pwede
may
nga.
Logitech. Yeah.
Kahit yung A4 Tech lang, basta meron kang USB dongle and yung dongle nila is nasa 1.5 din, nakakainis.
Oo. 1.5 din. Sobrang mahal, 'di ba? So, I mean, sa akin kasi luma eh. So, may USB pa ako eh. So, yung sa'yo kasi wala na ng USB yata yan. Lightning
Puro
na yan
siya
sa'yo, 'di ba? Or the
USB-C.
USB-C. Yeah. So, yun. It's very hard. But fortunately, when I bought it, I mean, when I was about to buy it and tested the keyboard, nag-work bigla yung keyboard ng Mac. So, yeah, good thing.
Nakaramdam
At
siya.
least
Nagsendo.
nakaramdam siya. Oh, yeah. Ayaw niya yata magpasaksak ng ibang keyboard. Yeah. Yeah, so we already have 44 people watching us today, and I think some of them are from YouTube. So again, guys, before we start, just to tell everyone and to para everyone knows what to do during the session. So today, Zonily will talk about iOS development. So just an introduction. Uh, a lot of the viewers today are guys who don't have any experience on iOS development. So they probably had a little experience in Android development, pero wala pa talaga ng iOS. So today we're gonna give you an introduction on that. And I think the question for Z today is why should you code native for iOS? I think that's very important, an important question that we will try to, that Z will definitely answer by the end of this session. Tama ba, Z?
Yeah.
Or am I setting the expectations wrong?
It's something na it can be asked within, pero I will
Uh,
focus on like basics of building the application. But definitely it's something that we can talk about later.
yes, I think there's beauty still, despite everything that's uh, it well there are a lot of technologies out there that's making development a lot more accessible,
Mhm.
especially to entry level practitioners and people would like to learn the technology at the comforts of their own home. uh, pero I think there's still beauty and value in developing native. So in another session, supposedly today, but we had to move it. In another session, we will also talk about Android native.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's with the I think with Kotlin or with Android community in the Philippines, we will have a speaker who will share to us why it's important to still learn or know how to develop natively for Android. Um, but today we're gonna focus on iOS muna, and then Zonally will try to show us the beauty of Xcode. So yun.
Yeah,
Yeah, aside dun sa sobrang bigat na package when you try to download it and the need for so much disk space and
hindi
then
kaya
RAM,
wait.
uh, hindi kakayanin and your RAM must be
At least
what would you recommend, Z?
at least 8 gig for
Mhm.
the newer MacBook lineups. Pero if you're using something like a 2015 MacBook below, I'd
Mhm.
say mas kailangan mo na around 16 gig na siya.
Wow. Yeah. So there. So 16 gig of RAM. So in a PC environment, I think that is very doable since I think most ng mga build ng mga developers ngayon is 16 gig na yung RAM, and I think they can always just upgrade it if they want to. It's just a matter of investing a little money. Pero it's harder if you're using a Mac because I would say it requires a lot more investment.
Yeah.
Diba?
Kasi you can't really upgrade the newer MacBooks eh. It's
Oo.
soldered na. Kaya pag bibili ka, you should buy the big ones.
Oo. Well, I survived with my laptop na 4 RAM, but ano ba naman ginagawa ko? Very basic lang, right? So, can you upgrade like the older iMacs, MacBook Air, like MacBook Pro?
If you're using like the 2015 versions below, pwede pa sila.
Hmm. Really? Ah, that's
Another
nice.
device na pwede pang i-upgrade is yung Mac Pro. Kaso Mac Pro is
Mm-hmm.
too expensive. The other one that's upgradable is the Mac Mini. Mac
Oh, the
Mini is
Mac Mini.
the great development tool right now for iOS. Kung hindi
Oo.
mo siya bibit-bitin kung saan-saan.
Yeah, I think I was looking at that as well, Mac Mini, and kaya lang CPU pa nga lang yun. Kaya it really gets you to think if you will invest in the Mac, I think it's a good investment. Pero it gives you a lot of options then if you would rather have the PC. I think with AMD and all the cheaper options for the amount of 100,000 pesos, I think super powerful na ng pwede ka mag-overclock and then sobrang
Yeah,
lakas na game na yung pwede mong laruin sa PC, right?
if
But
you're going to be thinking about bang for the buck talaga sa MacBook, medyo lugi ka.
yes, I think so
Pero
too. But for designers, I think they would choose the MacBook just because it gives them the how do you say this? Yung color, it's really different. Eh.
yeah, the
Mm,
monitor.
the monitor is very different. Actually, it's one of the reasons why I bought mine as well. Kasi you can really tell the difference pag PC, yung regular PC, like the Asus, the Dell, and all that. The color of the screen is really different as compared to uh, the Mac. Well, so today I think we have 56 viewers na, and it's already 5:14. So I think
Yeah,
it's a good time to start.
it's a good time to
So
start.
yeah, so guys, thank you so much for tuning in. So you're watching the 11th session of techph.org, and today we have Zonily Pesquera, iOS engineer from Straitpoint Technologies, who will spend some time with us to help us understand uh, the I like to use the word the beauty of iOS development with Swift and SwiftUI. So in this session, and just to set everyone's expectation, in this session we will horizontally will share to you some information about iOS development and the tools that you need to have, the requirements for you to be able to start developing for iOS. And I think with our viewers tonight, we have a few people who are here to learn a new skill. So we'll try our very best to engage with you and to help you in your journey. I think it's going to be a long one, but um, I know that it's going to be very exciting as well. The satisfaction of being able to build your own technology at the end of at the end of all your training is very satisfying. And I think Zonally can attest to that. And also, please use the comment section. That's our way of making sure that our sessions are as clear as they can. So at any point, if you have any question about the session, please make use of the comments. So you can just type the comments if you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube. So please do use the comment section. Zonally will see it. I will see it. If we think that it needs to be answered right away, then we will definitely address your questions. And but if any part of the presentation will provide you the answer, then definitely we will just probably save it at the end of the session. Pero for now, we'll try to answer the questions as we go. And we will be together for I think for 90 minutes or more with the Q&A. So guys, and also don't forget, just to help us reach out to more people, if you can also share. So in the video, you can click on the share button and click on watch party, and then you can, if you're part of any group, in your school or tech groups, you can do a watch party so that we can reach as many people as we can. Yeah.
Yeah.
And our videos will be made available at the end of this session. So, but you wouldn't be able to get the chance to engage with our speaker today, Zonily Pesquera. So, but before we start, I would also like to mention that this free event is brought to you by recruitday.com. So if you're looking for an opportunity during these hard times, just visit recruitday.com, and then you can apply, or you can also refer your friends to tech jobs. So we have a wide array of tech opportunities, entry level or anong term dun?
Pro.
Expert level, pro
Yeah.
level. Yeah, pro level like or god level like Zonily, diba?
Uy,
So
di pa ako ganun.
well, okay. Yeah, nandun ka na, Z. Don't be too humble. So, if you're looking for that, you can just visit recruitday.com. And one exciting thing about that is you can also refer your friends. So, you can get a referral incentive for every successful hire. And very interestingly, we have opportunities for Android developers as well. So you can scan the QR code, and we will provide you the link in the comment section as well later. So if you know anyone who's looking for a job as an Android developer, you can just scan the QR code, um, create a referral link, and then send it to your friends. Just don't spam your friends because mabablock ka ni Facebook. And for next time, for next week, I think we will talk about VR. So we have members of the VRPH. It's a tech community dedicated to VR enthusiasts and VR developers and game developers here in the Philippines. So we will have David Pacheco and Christopher David, the co-founder of VR Immersive Technologies, who will share to us about, who will give us more information about VR game design. I think it's very interesting because as what Christopher David would say, VR is is the final computing platform. So in the future, you will see people we will no longer be using mobile phones or laptops. Naka headset na lang tayo all the time, like mga zombies, right? There. So guys, again, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. I really didn't think that I would be saying that line for my career dito sa yeah, para akong influencer, pero just try to subscribe din para at least you get updates if we're uploading mga videos there, because we will also try to create new videos that we will make exclusive to members of the community. And all the videos of our past events will be saved on the YouTube channel. So it'd be good to subscribe to para you can watch them, and then if at any point in this session, if there's anything you missed, then you can always just go back to the video sa YouTube. So please subscribe to our channel as well. I think at the moment, I'm very proud to say that we have 49 subscribers. In a biggest accomplishment ko for during the lockdown. But guys, please subscribe and share as well. So we have a few comments na. So we will answer them. So Kate and Mark Bermilio, we will try to answer your questions later during Zonily session. So guys, keep the questions coming in because that's the only way that we can engage with you with the limited interaction that we have doing this online. Okay, and additionally, also for those on July, we will have further into design. So we will talk about game design and a few aspects of UX. So we're also inviting people who would like to share their knowledge on UX design. I think we will talk about product design and UX. So we did an introduction last time with Rain Liao, but this time it will be more specific. Just to help you start your career, and also I think we will also help you create your portfolio because I think for designers that's very important as well. So please make sure to like our page and so that you'll get updated of our upcoming sessions. And lastly, introduction to design thinking. So this is a very good skill that you can have if you are a designer or if you want to be a designer. So all you have to do is just, hindi ko pa pala natatanggal itong we will start in a few minutes. Mga tuloy yan. There. So scan the QR code. It's an online self-paced course. So scan nyo lang and then we will provide the link as well in the comment section. And then you can just, take your time with the course. And I think if there's a certificate at the end, so yung mga nagtatanong ng certificate, this will have a certificate. But to make sure that all our online sessions are free, I'm sorry to tell you guys that we won't be able to give out certificates, but definitely we can refer you to places that can provide you a certificate. It's gonna be weird if you put on your resume online Saturday session with Zonily James Pesquera by techph.org. Tapos yung employer maghanap, ano ba itong techph.org? So yeah. So it's gonna be better if it's from learning establishment talaga. Okay, so I think we're ready to start. We have 66 people watching. So guys, please keep sharing the video so that we will reach your friends who would like access to this kind of content. Okay. So guys, with no further ado, let me introduce you to Zonily Pesquera.
Hello. So, yeah. How
Yeah,
do we
okay.
start this?
Sige, teka lang. Medyo, yan. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll leave that and the floor is yours.
So yeah, for our talk today, I'm going to be talking about iOS development with Swift and SwiftUI. So before anything else, I'm going to be introducing myself. So hi, I'm Zonily James. I'm an active member and volunteer of SwiftPH and FlutterPH. So SwiftPH is actually a community of iOS developers here in the Philippines. So if you want to join them or join us rather, you can just go to our website, swift.ph. And then here there is a meetup in the community group. For example, if you want to join and see whether or not there will be events in the future, just go click the meetups link and then it will direct you to swift.ph meetup group. So yeah, we have a lot of events, and for the past, I think, 3 years, we have had around 35 events. And we do this monthly. So if you are very much interested in learning about iOS, you can join this. I'm going to be commenting in this on the Facebook link so you guys can click it and join it. Ta-da! There you go. Now going back to the presentation. So I work as an iOS engineer at Straitpoint. So Straitpoint is the company that I'm working for right now, and they're very much supportive when it comes to talks like this. So for example, they actually shared this event for TechPH around a few days ago, and they are very much active within the company, wherein they actually like give you mentors so you can develop your career. So if you're interested in a good company that's for developing your career and developing yourself as a person, I think Stratpoint's a good choice. And for my hobbies, I play music and play a lot on my Switch. So these are the games I'm playing. So before the talk, I'm going to be plugging an event. This is an event by Apple. This is called WWDC, also known as the Worldwide Developer Conference. If this is the event that they do annually, normally they do it offline, wherein they set in a big event in San Francisco. But since we're all in quarantine, this year it's going to be different. It's going to be all live. So for example, if you want to join, you can actually just visit their website, and you see here that there are a lot of things that will be happening. So you can just add it to your calendar, and then you can just join in live and watch their event. So there will be a lot of engineering sessions where you can learn about the new technologies that they will be releasing. Last year, they released SwiftUI, and that's going to be in my talk today. There will be a new developer forum for iOS developers, and it's something that they are like heavily promoting, so developers can talk with each other, not just on their community Slack. And then there are one-on-one developer labs, but it's hard to go in because this one is more like per a lottery basis. And design awards, wherein, for example, they will be like presenting like this app is good, this app is good. So yeah, if you want to go watch with us uh, on a watch party, actually Michi, one of our leads at SwiftPH, created a watch party for us that we can join in. So this is where we can watch together. So there are a lot of people who already signed up for this, and there will be speakers from international iOS developers and they are very well known in the community. For example, if you are already using, for example, hacking with Swift, Paul Hudson is one of the speakers that will be there. For other stuff like the Disney streaming service, Donnie Walls will be there. I think he will be talking about Combine. And yeah, that's it for the WWDC. So once again, if you are interested in watching the WWDC 2020, you can just join in using these links. I'm going to be copying this as well. I'm going to be pasting it in the chat later. So for the agenda for today, I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of iOS development, the requirements to build an iOS application, the Swift programming language, and your first Xcode project. So let me start off with a quote. In today's modern world, people are either asleep or connected. We are currently in the middle of a crisis. Most of us are either quarantined in our homes. We can't go out. So it's either, for me, for example, I'm usually just in my house in these four walls. I'm either using my phone, chatting with people, or like creating new content, studying. So I'm connected. I'm connected on the internet, or I'm asleep in my bed right there. So if you are going to be like thinking about building applications, now is the time, because now people are more and more becoming more reliant on their mobile devices. And that's why we have iOS and Android and Huawei. So for this talk, I'm going to be talking about iOS. Yeah, once again. So let's start with the pros and cons. If you have any questions, feel free to comment it on the comment section. I'll try to answer as much of them as I can later on after we finish with the demo. So why choose iOS? Well, for iOS development, the development complexity is much simpler other than, for example, if you're developing for Android or for web. As for one, when you are going to be talking about iOS, there are only a few things you have to think about. For device OS support, iOS users have a tendency to upgrade to the latest operating system as early as it gets released. And for example, this is data that came from last year. So around 77% of iOS devices have been upgraded to iOS 13. And this is an OS that has been released last year. Last year, when iOS 12 was released, I think at the start of 2019, there were already around 80 to 90% of iOS users. I think this one is caused just because of the issues with iOS 13 earlier this year, but the issues are far from gone now. And for iOS users, iOS devices rather, there is actually a 5-year support for devices. So whenever you're going to buy an iOS device, it's going to be very much supported up until at least the devices that were released 5 years ago. For example, in this graph, you can see that this 2019, last year, the 11 Pro Max was released. And then their support for iOS 13 at the same time is reaching up until iPhone 6s and 6s Plus. And I think that's something that's not very huge within the developer landscape of Android, because normally Android devices just come and go. And yeah, I am also an Android user, so I have been experiencing this as well. So next thing we have to think about is the screen size support. So when it comes to iOS development, since there are only a few like devices rather than For example, for web development, you have to think about different browsers, different monitors, and even with mobile devices, it can also run there, and there are different types of browsers within that environment as well. So with iOS development, you only have to think about a few screen sizes, and developing for just this niche of a screen size is very much helpful when you're developing, because if you're going to be thinking about multiple screen sizes, it's going to be harder to develop. And for example, with Android, since there are many other manufacturers, it's just not Google. There's Huawei, there is Samsung, there is Asus, there's OnePlus, and a lot more others. So screen sizes can be very, very hard to think about when you're developing for Android. And the next one is that iOS developers, or right, iOS users tend to spend a lot more. So this data came from statista.com. So for example, last year, the I'm going to be showing you a graph of how much the users for iOS and Android are for US. So even though there is around 50-50-ish, iOS users still spend about 77% a lot more rather than Android users. And I think this is something that is caused because of the layout of the iOS App Store. For example, on this GIF right here, this is actually the App Store. And you can see that applications are very much, if your application is good, they will probably put it here and say, look at your app, look at this application, try to download it. Many people are using it and it's good. And it's one of the things that makes the Apple App Store a very, very, what do you call this, enticing to download applications. Another thing is, for example, last year there was a game released for the Nintendo Switch, and normally when a game is released, other people are like, how can I get a guide? Where can I see something that could teach me how to play this game, or like teach me how to go through the games more easily? And this one is called the Ach Travel Guide. So this application was actually released, I think, a few days after Animal Crossing was released, and it's priced at around 199 pesos. So that's alright, 5, 10, 15, 20, like $4. And since it has this number 23 reference, it means that it is around one of the top 100 applications within the App Store for this type of companion app. So there are a lot of users that downloaded this, and it's one of the things that makes, if you are going to be doing something like this, I think you should really consider iOS development, because iOS users tend to spend a lot more. So why not iOS? Well, actually, globally, iOS is defeated by Android at around a global domination of 75%. So that's a huge margin. So imagine the market size wherein there's only 25% of iOS users. So say, give or take, there are 2 billion users within the world that are using mobile phones, and there are only 500 million iOS users compared to the 1,500,000,000 Android users. At the United States, as I said earlier, it's around 50-50. Here in the Philippines, we are around 80-20. Once again, this data came from Statista, and this is data from 2019. Why not iOS again? iOS development is expensive. You have to have a substantial amount just to start developing for iOS. For one, you need a Mac OS X device, so just you can build an application. I'll be going through that later with the requirements. And for example, for the developer program, and this is like a comparison within the Google, Huawei, and Apple developer programs. For Google, you have to pay $25 one-time payment. You can release as much applications as you want, and you don't have to pay again next year. For Huawei, it's free, but you have to like give identity verifications to show that you're a legitimate person or a legitimate developer. There are a lot of requirements for that as well. And for Apple, other than the requirements that are very extensive, wherein you have to verify who you are and stuff, you actually have to pay $99 every year if you are going to be releasing applications for iOS. But if you're just going to be developing and playing around, writing apps and not releasing it to any kind of app store anywhere, It's free. You can only run on one device though. You can run on multiple devices. So if you have multiple iOS devices, you have to actually buy the $99 if you want to try to run it to multiple devices. So let's go on with the requirements of building an iOS application. Again, you have to have a Mac computer running on their latest OS, which is Mac OS X. For any application development that runs on any Apple OS, which means, for example, you have Watch OS, you have TV OS, you have iPad OS, you have iOS, you need to have a Mac computer that runs on Mac OS X. Because Xcode, the development IDE for iOS applications, can only run on Mac computers. And this is non-negotiable by Apple. So yeah, we are very much limited. So this is actually one of the caveats of being an iOS developer. You can't like create a PC that's super powerful and try to like develop iOS applications there. You can't. You have to have a Mac computer. Sorry about that. So another thing is Xcode. So Xcode is an IDE, so it's much like Android Studio for if you're going to be developing applications for Android. But without Xcode, you can't develop iOS applications. So this is true even for cross-platform frameworks such as React Native, Xamarin, Cordova, Flutter. They still need to have some sort of connection to Xcode. So for example, if you will be using these platforms to develop applications on your Windows PC, so you can run them on your Android device, no worries. But if you're going to be running them on your iOS device, you would need to have access to a Mac device. So it's either like you're going to be setting up a CI that runs on the cloud, or you're going to be borrowing a device of your friend or something. So yeah, even with cross-platform frameworks, you will still need Xcode and a Mac OS computer. So how do you install Xcode? Actually, it's very simple. Just open the Mac App Store, you search for Xcode, and then you just click Get. Then wait for it to download. So it's going to be taking, depending on your internet, because this tool is 8 gigabytes. It includes all of the developer resources. So once it installs, you can use it as is. You don't have to think about anything else. So okay, let's start with the Swift programming language. This is where I'm going to be demoing how Swift works. And actually, Swift is a powerful and intuitive programming language for Mac OS, iOS, watchOS, and tvOS. So this is actually an open source language that is hosted on GitHub. Swift, not any of the iOS resources. It's just Swift that is open source. So let's start with the demo. We're going to be opening Xcode. File, new, playground. Sorry, it opened on my other screen. So for example, this is Xcode. What you would have to do is create file, new, playground. This is where you can play around with iOS, or rather Swift. So this is an application that also exists on your iPad. So if you want to learn about iOS development, or rather Swift, the programming language, you can actually use your iPad if you have an iPad. So let's start off with a blank application, then click next. I'm just going to be naming it Hello Swift. I'm going to be putting it on my desktop, and oops, I already have that one. So 01. Full screen, and then I'm going to be setting it to larger. So I think from the live stream it's readable. Yeah, it is readable. So let's talk about Swift. Swift, just like any other modern programming language, has data types. So I'm going to be removing this for now and then adding a comment here. So whenever you declare a variable, you can declare it rather with the keyword that is called let. or var. I will explain the difference between these two keywords. So for now, I'm going to be using let. So if I'm going to be creating a number or an integer, I'm going to call it number, and then I'm going to assign the data type. So for example, the data type would be 20. What if I create another number that has decimals? So I can just create it like this again, another number, which is 20.0. And then what if I want to use a string? So a string or a text. So let's add a sentence. Quick brown fox. So how do we know what kind of data type these things are? So Swift actually has a way that they can automatically detect the data type you're using whenever you create a variable. So let's print type of. So we're going to be printing on our console what the data type of a specific variable is. So for this one, for example, I'm going to be printing number. I'm going to show the debug console by clicking this one here, and then I'm going to run it. It's going to take a while because I'm streaming, so let's wait for it to build. There you go. So yeah, it definitely is an integer. So if I'm going to be checking this one, the other number with a floating point, a decimal, let's just add another one. I'm going to be checking the another number and the sentence. I'm going to be running it. So there you go. Swift automatically checks for you what the data types are. Now, when you are declaring variables, like I said, you can use either let, or you can either use var. So when we declare these variables here, they are already constant. So basically, they are immutable, and that means you cannot change them. So for example, I want to change the value of number to, let's say, 30. Xcode will automatically give you an error message that you cannot assign a value to number because it is a let and it is a constant. So you can actually just either click this here and then fix, and it's automatically gonna change to be a var for you. So with this, you can actually change its value all the time now. Then yeah, so let's print the value of variable before and after. Print number, and print number. So when you print it like this, I'm going to be commenting this out so you won't have to think about that. Let's wait for it to run. Yeah, so since our initial value was actually 20, when we print it here, it's still 20. After the next line, it's going to be 30. Now it's 100. Now, I talked earlier about Swift being a language that automatically detects the values of your variables, or rather the data types of your variables for you. So you can actually explicitly declare what kind of variable you're going to be using for your data, for your variables. So for example, I'm going to be creating an item. So an item usually has a title. So this is a string. And I'm going to be, say, my keyboard is ducky1 to TKL. So this is how you create explicitly declared variables. So once again, you have the keyword to say that you're going to be creating an object. So this is your object or variable, and this is the data type. It's always separated by a colon, and then this is your value separated by the equal sign. What if I'm going to be creating a number? So let count is, or is int is equal to 1. So int is the data type for numbers. It means integer. And finally, the other basic one is the double, which is the decimal. The price double is equal to, let's say, 3,000. So when you're declaring a floating point object, you're gonna actually just remove the decimal. So when you declare it with an explicit data type, it can automatically say that this is this is a double. But if you're going to be declaring it without explicitly saying it is a double, you need to add the decimal point. So it's automatically detected. Once again, if we're going to be printing these things out, print type of oops. So yeah, as you saw right there, Xcode automatically checks for you whether or not your code can be runnable. So if you have, like, for example, you forgot to add a parenthesis somewhere, but if you're going to be trying to run it, there will be an error message while you're editing, and you don't have to wait for it to be run. So this is extremely helpful when you're developing, so it reduces your number of errors. So I'm going to be commenting out these things again. So our logs will be quite simple. So once we print them out, these are the three that will be get printed, and it's string, an int, and a double. A string, an int, and a double. What if you want to assign another data type on an existing variable? So for example, I'm going to be creating item. I want to add a number on it. I want to change it to a number. So first, let's change it to a variable, and I'm going to add a number. For example, 42. You can't actually do this because they are different data types, and Xcode will complain you cannot assign a value of type int. This is the original. This is the one that you are trying to assign to the variable of type string. So if you want to do something like that, you have to change its data type to any, and there you go. You can change it to any variable you want. But when you use any, if you are going to reassign this to another variable, for example, item2, item, it's still going to be of type any object or type any. So if I'm going to be verifying the type of item2 right here, it's still going to be, wait, since it's object, so I have to specifically declare this as any. So this is actually the thing about Swift, is it's very like finicky. So for example, first the type of the data type of any is string. Now I change it to integer. So if I print the data types of these objects before and after, I set, it's going to be saying the actual type of the object before it gets set. So for example, before it was a string, so right here it's a string. Now if I print it, it's going to be a string. This is now an int. If I print it, it's supposed to be an int. Let's comment this out for now and run it. There you go. So any object is a container wherein you can just use any kind of data type. Now let's go to string building. I'm going to comment out these things again. So for example, we have a summary text. Summary. If you're going to be building a string, so I'm going to be putting back this object, it's a string, and I'm going to be using that and this sentence. So this summary is a string object, so I can actually just add strings like this one. So we can use the plus sign, adding. You're adding objects to one another. So for example, I am adding sentence, then adding a space between them, and adding the item string. So once I print this, string actually got added with each other. So once again, the sentence is just this one. So they're actually the same. If you look at it, then I added a space and then this one. So what if you want to add like objects, or rather not strings, within the same string? So there are two ways to do that. So for example, you can just click add again, then add a space. For example, I'm going to be using the price. So I'm going to add here price, colon, so there is a display. And then I can just add another one, which is, I'm going to be saying that this is a string. And then I'm going to be adding the variable right there. And once I print it, you can see that we have added the price. The other way to do it is to use string interpolation. And string interpolation can be done by using the, I think this is the backslash and the parentheses. I'm going to be removing this and this, and I will add any other data type here. So for example, I'm going to be adding price. The other one is, for example, count. So I'm going to be editing this string once again to be using only string interpolation. Space, and then remove this. Then sentence. So what I'm doing here is that I'm saying this sentence will be added to the item, and then there's a price, and then there's a price. For example, I want to add the count as well. Count. If I want to separate them on new lines, or like they're going to be on multiple lines here when we print it out, let's just add a backslash n. This is a line break, basically. There you go. Another way that you can actually create a multi-line string is by using the triple, they call this triple quote. So let's say this is summary v2. I'm going to be adding a separator here for now. So we can do something like this. So hello there, devs. So you don't have to actually use the backslash n for this one, because this is going to be automatically set into new lines. Oops, I did not print it out. There you go. So once again, string interpolation also works within this one. So for example, if I'm going to be creating the purchase summary once again, which is summary item name, item, count, price, there you go. It's automatically assigned right there. Signing an error. If you want, I have go in there. So Swift is like any other language. It can contain methods as well. So for example, let's create a method. So to create a method, you have to use the keyword func, which means function. And then you declare, for example, the method name. So let's call this one add. And then you add the parentheses in the brackets. So to call this, you can just call it like this. And there's your method. So if you want to like pass on datas to this one, or rather what we call it in programming, parameters. So for example, I'm going to be adding two numbers. I'm going to be calling this one x, and this one will be y. So these are the two objects that we're going to be adding. So you have to specify the data type. So inside it, I'm just going to print out what it is. So x plus y. So since I already edited the existing method, it's going to be actually saying an error message here that the other use of the method has missing arguments or parameters. So I can actually just fix it, and it's going to be generated right there for you. So for example, if I pass on 24 and 25, if I run it, it's going to be here. It's 49. So 24 plus 25 is 49. What if I want to pass variables? So let's say we have number 1, let's say some x is equal to 100, and some y is equal to 200. We can actually pass on these variables as well inside the object. So once we print it, 100 plus 200 will be 300. There you go. I'm going to be commenting this out so we cannot. There you go. So when you create a method, these methods can actually create new values as well. So for example, if we're going to be appending, like for example, we're going to be using first name and then last name. So let's add first name. And last name is equal to Pesquera. Create the method func create name, create full name. So let's pass on a parameter. Let's say first name string and then last name. If you want your method to create new values, it should have a return type. What this means is that once the method gets called, it's going to be returning a new value. So for example, to say that it needs to return a new value, I just have to add this dash greater than, and then say the data type, for example, will be string. You can actually use any kind of data type here, string, int, double, but for this one, it's going to be string. And then within the method, it's going to be returning. So yeah, it's going to be returning a data type. So there needs to be the return keyword. And then for example, since this one is first name, this one is last name, first name, and let's rename this to sum. So once we use that that method, so we can just call it create first name, full name, some first name, some last name. And then we can assign it to a variable, say full name. Print it. There you go. So that's how you return new data types for objects, so for methods. So for other programming languages, and actually most programming languages has this concept called Null Ability. So this means is something, let's add this here. Null Ability. So nullable objects are objects that can be having no value. So basically, they're not empty, they're not zero, they're nothing. So for example, if I'm going to be creating a string that can be null, current or order, for example, I just have to add the question mark. So what this means is that this is an object that can be null. So null objects for iOS is nil. So this is actually just a shorthand form. If say we're going to be saying it's something like this, optional string. So this is a shorthand of this. So it's preferred on iOS development that we use the shorthand expressions. So oops. So if we're going to be printing current order, there's going to be an error message that will be displayed because we cannot display. So if we try to print it right here, yeah, it's going to be nil. So if we want to add a default value for this one, so for example, we're going to be setting it to another variable, say let another object. Let's go to current order. But we don't want another object to be nullable as well, so we're going to be saying that it's a string. To fix that, you can just use the nil coalescing operator, which is a double question mark. What this does is that it's going to be assigning this object on the right. So for example, no order. It's going to be assigning this object if current order, the object on the left hand side, is null. So if I'm going to be printing this, another object. So since current order is nil, if I print it right here, it's going to be saying after I print another number. Oops. Come on Xcode. So if I print this, it's going to be saying that there is no order. Ay, another object pala, sorry. So yeah, it's going to be saying no order. But if I add a value here, so for example, that my current order is the item I declared earlier, which is the docky item. Once I print it, it's not going to be using this object anymore since this one already has a value. Now, let's move on to data structures. Data structures are a common term that is being used within application development or for programming languages. So there are like two basic data structures that are being used. For example, we have the array. The other one are dictionaries or maps on other languages as they call them. So for iOS, to create an array, you just have to say what am I going to say? Items. And then you are going to be using two brackets and just add the data type within there. So for example, let's call this iPhone. Or the other item is the item I added earlier, item. Or I'm going to be adding a new one, iPad. This is actually automatically being detected as an array. So if we try to check what the data type of items is, it's going to be of type string, array of string. So this is actually the shorthand one, wherein you just declare it like this. You can actually declare it like this as well. So this is another shorthand way of declaring the data type explicitly for an array. Another one is like this, but we do not prefer this for iOS development. As a standard, we're going to be using it like this. Once again, for example, if we're going to be using other objects, let's say numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one is already an integer, array of integer rather. We can actually mix and match the objects inside an array. So for example, we're going to be using multiple data types within an array. Let's say multiple different data types equal to, it's going to be using string, a number, and a decimal. It's going to be showing an error message here because it's a heterogeneous collection, which means that there are multiple data types inside it. So what we can do is we can just add any data type in here. So it's going to be saying that there are multiple data types inside. So I'm going to be placing it this to var. So I'm going to be adding objects within this array. So if I want to add a single object within this, I'm just going to call append. So I'm going to be adding a new element of type any. So for example, what I'm going to be adding here is a string. I can add multiple objects, like by using the append contents of method. So I can pass another array here. So for example, 1, 2, 3, or I can call on the use of the other data types, that other variables that we declared earlier. So I can pass them right there. Items. So once we print this out, different data types, it's going to be printed out like so, with a bracket at the very beginning, at the end. There's the string, the number, the date, the floating point number. This is the other array that we added earlier, 1, 2, 3, and the items, which is here. So if we want to like iterate within a object, so loops actually exist within Swift as well. So normally, for example, if you're familiar with a more for example, a C programming languages, so arrays look something like this. Rather, array looks look something like this. For int I is equal to 0, I is greater than or equal to the end, and then I plus plus. So this one is for C, or rather most programming languages has something like like this for the syntax of a for loop. For iOS, it's quite different. It's going to be looking something like this. So we're going to be using this one for now. This is called a for in loop for data type in different data types. So what this does is that it's going to be going through each of the object within the array. So since this is our current object, I'm going to be adding this here for reference. You can see them. So I'm going to be like iterating what the data type of each object are. So print object command yes. Then I'm going to be using the type of data type. There you go. It's a string. There's an int. There's a double. There's a string, and there's 3 ints once again, and then there's 3 ints once again. So this is something that's very Swifty, as they say. Now let's go on to dictionaries. So dictionaries are like arrays. When you declare them, you're going to be using brackets as well. But not to confuse yourself, there is a difference wherein you have, for example, for array, you declare something like this. For dictionaries, it's actually a key value object. So what does that mean? So I'm going to be specifying the key and value type for this one. So this is going to be using a string and a string. So this is the key. So for example, the key is item. I'm going to be using item here. And then the next one is price. Oops, price. And then I'm going to be using the price earlier. Price. And then what's the other object as well? Count. So once we print this, it's going to be looking something like this. So I'm going to be printing this out. Oops. I'm going to be commenting this out. Oops, price. It's going to be print. And you have to separate them with commas. So this is so everyone can see it. This one right here is a key, which is on the left-hand side of the column. And on the right-hand side, there's the value. So I'm going to be explaining later why there is a key and there is a value. So you're going to, like arrays, it's separated once again with commas if you're going to be declaring multiple objects within the dictionary. So once we print them out like this, I'm going to comment this out as well. It's going to be printed like so. So if we like place this here, it's going to be looking something like this. There you go. So it's the same object. Dictionaries are objects wherein there's a key. So why is there a key? Because this object is something that you can actually access. So for example, if you're going to be accessing that item again, it's equal to dictionary, and you call, since this is the key item, I'm going to be calling this one. So if I print this out, item again should be the same as the item value. So I'm going to be printing out this here also. I'm going to be adding a separator. Oh. So when an object is returned from a dictionary, it's automatically optional. So that means it's a nullable string. So if we want it to be, when you're displaying it, don't have this optional value, you can actually just add in the or empty. There you go. It's the same value. So if you want to check whether or not these objects are of the same type, so we have conditional statements. So these are usually what we see everywhere. So if an object, if condition, so I'm going to be, if a condition is true, this block will be run. If not, this condition will be run. So for this one, since this is a condition, for Swift, you don't have to add open and close parentheses. So I'm going to be checking whether or not item and item again is the same type. So if item is equal to item again, so the double equal sign is the equality operator. So I'm going to be printing something here. Let's say item and item again are the same objects, have the same objects, do not have. I'm going to be printing this out. Since item and item again are the same, so they're going to be printing this out. But if I'm going to be putting another string here, let's say hello, since their contents are basically not the same, so since this is the condition we're going to be looking at, it's actually going to go here because it's not the same condition. And once again, since we're going to be talking about object-oriented programming, there are objects within Swift as well. There is a struct and a class. So these objects are basically more or less the same. I'm not going to be going around whether or not which object to use, but I'm going to be using the struct for now, and there's an enum as well as. So struct, let's say I'm going to be creating an object for a human. Normally, what does a human have? A human has a name, string. A human has an age of an integer. Don't have a double for an age. That's weird. Let's say you have that address. So this is basically an object. So you created a new data type. So if you're going to be accessing it, you can just, let's create a human. And once again, use this. And then you add a parenthesis, and automatically it will generate the needed parameters for you to create that object. So this is one of the benefits of a struct. So I use struct more rather than I use a class. I'm going to be explaining the difference later. So for example, a human, you just add Zonily. Say my age is 20 or 24, address Manila. Once we print this out, it's going to be something like this. I'm going to be using this once again. So if I want to access a specific object within human, let's just say I'm going to be printing just the name. Just use the dot. So this is dot notation, so I can access other objects within it. So for example, human.name. There you go. It's printing just that specific object. Now, you can actually do this with a class as well. So let's rename this to human struct. And then I'm going to be printing this here and then calling it class. The main difference between a struct and the class is that class doesn't generate initializers automatically for you. So you have to create an initializer of your own. So for example, I'm going to be using the init keyword, and I'm going to be passing this objects as parameters. This is automatically generated with structs. That's why I use structs more than classes. There are other benefits as well. Structs are faster than classes, and structs are data types, are data objects rather than reference objects. So yeah, if you mistakenly say do something like this, it's totally possible. So if you create a human, I'm going to be copying this, using this here, and I'm going to be using the human class. So I can actually change this around to say full name. It's going to be using this one. So this is a mistake, so take note of this. Since I assigned name to address and full name to address, so if you display the value of your object right here, it's going to be displaying something like this because it's a class, it's not a data type. So if I use this, for example, I can actually do this as well with a struct, but I'm going to be, wait, I'm going ahead of myself. So if I print out human.address and human.name, let's add in their values right here. Since we assigned them to the wrong objects, it's going to be showing the wrong one. So whenever you're using classes, you have to make sure that you are assigning the correct object to the correct variable. So that's something you have to think about. So there you have it with objects. And objects can also contain methods within themselves. So I'm going to be using this once again, comment this out, and I'm going to be putting it down here below. So if I add an object here, say I'd say print details, func print details. I'm going to be printing name, age, address. I'm going to be using this. And so if I print this, if I'm going to be accessing this method, I'm just going to call human again that print details. You can't call this outside since it's declared inside an object. So for example, if I'm going to be trying to call right here outside, it's just going to show some error that this method does not exist. And use of unresolved identifier, it means it does not exist. It cannot find it anywhere in the code base within this context. So it needs to be inside the same context. So it's inside this bracket. So it can only be accessed by accessing the human again variable. So there you go. So once we print this out again, it's going to be showing something like this. Yoo-hoo. Okay. There you go. Ta-da. Okay. I'm done with the basic stuff Swift, and let's go back to the presentation. I'm going to be using Swift later when I'm going to be discussing SwiftUI. So everything that we learned with Swift can be used within SwiftUI as well. So as a recap, Swift is a modern language. So it has null safety, it has type inference, and it has a concise code. Swift is object-oriented. You have classes, you have structs, you have enums. Okay, I forgot about enums. Going back. Enum is an object that's kind of like, it's an outlier. It's not like a struct or a class. So for example, enums are usually created for, say, let's say gender. So for example, we have different cases for it. So for example, case, you have male. You have to use a small, what do you call this? Small caps, small letter. Yeah. And then you have to declare another one. So say female, say undefined for those people who don't want to say their gender. It's other. So when you are going to be using this, so for example, you have let gender is of type gender, then you can actually just use the dot, and then all of these cases will appear, and then you can assign it right then and there. Other way of doing this is, for example, you have to say gender is equal to gender dot female or something. You can't do something like you can't do something like this because your compiler does not know what type this is, so it won't appear. So to do that, you either have to do this or do this. And there are a lot of things you can actually do with enums. For example, if you're going to be setting, say, what kind of, say, consoles, say, case PlayStation, you can have a data type as well. Say, so next one is Nintendo Switch, case Xbox. So for this one, since it does not have a data type that you assign to it, it does not have a raw value. So if we're going to be saying something like, if I want to print it like this, print, it has no raw value. It means it has no equivalent in a data type that is already specified right here. So for example, this one can be a string, and the value of the dot PlayStation will be this string right here. So for example, if I'm going to be printing it, consoles dot PlayStation, and if I print it with the raw value, it's going to be two different cases. So I'm going to be adding this one. See right there, this one is going to be just displaying this, while the other is displaying the raw value. So the difference with initializing these objects to are like, for gender, for the no data type enum, you can't have say something like gender and then you can add a parameter because it has no raw value. For consoles, on the other hand, which is an enum with a data type, it automatically has this raw value initializer. So for example, if I add here something that does not exist within the choices, let's say Atari, that console, let's go to Atari. I'm going to be printing this out. It's going to say that this is a null object because it does not exist within the choices. So it cannot find that choice. So it's going to be like checking with, in this cases, whether or not the object exists. So it's going to be nil right here. So if I say I'm going to be using this one, an Xbox, it's going to be returning the .xbox. There you go, consoles.xbox. And what if I just use a case inside here? It's still going to return null, since the value of the Nintendo Switch is actually this one. Another way to declare an object such as this is you just use the, okay, there you go. You can actually do that as well. So going back to presentation, there you go. We have classes, we have structs and enums. And once again, Swift is type safe. We have the nil coalescing operator to check whether or not this is the default value. So it's going to be a PlayStation if it's null. And then that's basically the gist of Swift as a programming language. Now, what I showed you earlier is the Swift playgrounds that is being run within Xcode. So whenever you're going to be creating an iOS application, the Swift playgrounds some is not something that you're going to be mainly using. So what you're going to be using is, for example, new file, new project. So when you open your Xcode like this, it's going to be like giving you some basic template applications wherein you can either create a game, you can create an augmented reality application, you can create an iMessage app, you can actually even create libraries that can be run by other applications. But for now, we're going to be creating a Swift UI application. So let's go back to the presentation since I'm going to be explaining some stuff there as well. So there are two ways to create user interfaces. One is through the interface builder. So this is more well known as storyboards, XIBs, and this is supported in all device operating systems. The other one, which is new, and it was released last year within WWDC 19 or WWDC as they say, is SwiftUI. SwiftUI is Apple's new user interface toolkit. So it's basically like they're saying this is the better way of developing user interfaces right now. But the problem is it is only supported with devices that are running on iOS 13. And as I showed on the data earlier, there are only around 77% of users that are using iOS 13 globally, and this is varying within countries as well. And I think for Philippines, the number of iOS users is around 60 to 70%. As I checked, as I did not add it here. So yeah, for this talk, I'm going to be talking more about SwiftUI. So I saw a question earlier regarding what I do for what they call this programmatically or storyboards. I'm going to be answering that after the talk. So let's go back with SwiftUI. So with SwiftUI, I'm going to be talking about the basics of Xcode. Actually, I should have added a label here. So I'm going to be talking about the basics of Xcode, building blocks of SwiftUI, basic layouting with SwiftUI, and we're going to be following a developer tutorial by Xcode. So let's start with Xcode Basics. So yeah, I already showed you how to create a Xcode project, but let's do it again. So I'm going to be exiting this file, new project, and I'm going to be using the single view application, and then I will click next. So when you are going to be creating an iOS application, you are going to be given these choices right here. So the product name will be the name of your application that will be displayed inside of your home screen. So for example, I'm going to be called this Hello SwiftUI. For this one, we don't have to think about the team name and the organization name for now, but whenever we're learning, it's something very, what do you call this? We usually use our names as a student for language. For example, my name is Zonily James. I'm going to be using this as an organization name since I'm not developing for any organization. This is recommended by developers out everywhere. And the organization identifier is something like a website. So for example, if your website is zonilyjames.com, you have to reverse it. So it's going to be com.zonilyjames, no spaces here. And then automatically the bundle identifier will add the name of your product. So it's here. This organization identifier is something that you have to think about later on when you're going to be releasing your applications, because this determines whether or not your application is unique and is owned by you. So again, since we're going to be building UIs with SwiftUI, you're going to be needing to check this to be using SwiftUI and not storyboards. For the language as well, since we're going to be using Swift, it needs to use Swift, not Objective-C. These other objects are something that you don't have to, you can check out for now. Now, okay, let's click next. I'm going to be adding it here on the desktop. Let's wait. Once again, my Mac is kind of slow right now because we're streaming. So once you open up the Xcode project, you will see this screen. So what is this screen? So this screen is actually the first thing that you will see within your Xcode. This is now inside your project. So we have the different parts of Xcode. So this right here, the top part is the toolbar. Here is the navigator area. Here we can find like the files. So for example, if I zoom in, there you go. We can find here like this is your project. These are your files, the different files within your project. And then this is the editor area, this inside here. So whenever you click any kind of thing, for example, I click the project, I can see the project settings, so I can edit. So it's the editor area. So this is the, for example, a file or a code, so I can actually edit it here. So this is the editor area. And on the rightmost side of your screen is the utility area. So this right here is the utility area. Later on, I'll show you how we can use this when we're editing the code live. So we can have a lot of utilities that we can use inside here. And the last part is the debug area. So when you're going to be running your application, it's going to be throwing some logs at you. Like when we were running with the Swift playgrounds earlier, that there are stuff that are appearing down here. So this is the debug area. It's going to be showing you some application logs or errors, error messages, memory consumption, memory allocation, and stuff like that. So I'm going to be showing that once we start with the Xcode. So let's go back to the first screen that appeared within opening your Xcode project. So I'm going to be hiding the utility area and the navigator area. So once you open your Xcode project like this, it's going to contain this. So to run it, you can either use this, you can run it right here, but since we're going to be using SwiftUI, we can just resume it like right there. And there you have it. You have your first application, your Hello World application. You didn't have to do anything. And this is the first application developers normally develop. It's Hello World. Ta-da! Hello World. Now, as I said, we're going to be following the tutorial that is being given by Apple. So let's go to their website. So their website actually contains a lot of resources that we can use to like go on and learn SwiftUI. So for example, this right here, this screen, actually this small screen is actually just developed within a few code lines, a few files. And normally if you're going to be developing this with storyboards, you're gonna have to either drag and drop and do a lot of stuff. But for SwiftUI, it's very much easier. So for example, they're going to be using something like this, and it's just a stack of objects. Now for this one, I'm going to be going around this one, the first tutorial, which is creating and combining views. So let's get started. So what can we see within this website? First, there's this part right here. So we can pick which topic we're going to be using. So for this one, we're going to be using creating and combining views. And then on the right-hand part is that these are the components, or rather the steps of on this tutorial. So Apple says here that we're going to be using 40 minutes for developing this application, but it's going to be take a lot less since this one is just an estimation for them. Actually, when you view this site, it's very, how do you say it? It's interactive. So for example, I'm going to be scroll right here. It's going to say, how do I create my first project? Create a new project and explore the canvas. It's going to say a lot of stuff inside here. For example, it's going to be going around what I can do to create a new Xcode project. This is what we did earlier. And then this is the first screen. So basically, everything is being directed here. So we're not going to be going through this. I'm just going to summarize it. And our output would look something like this. So let's go back to Xcode. Oops, I think we have to go back. I'm going to be downloading their sample project. Let's wait for a while. Where's the Finder? It's my downloads. So it's here, right here. After I downloaded it, I just, so what we can see on the project files, I make it something big. Wait. So we can find resources. So this is the image that we're going to be using later. And then there are licenses. So this is not something that we need to think about. And they already actually have, like, this is the final working code. So we can just open that. But since we're going to be doing this from the beginning, let's start from the beginning. So Xcode. I'm going to be printing out, our layout will be displayed something like this. Okay, this one. So let's start with basics of SwiftUI. So what can you do with SwiftUI? So it's now running. So SwiftUI is actually faster and iterative and declarative development for iOS user interfaces. Because before, when we were developing, you have to like run and run and run again whenever you want to see something change on your screen. But with SwiftUI, you can just say, let's edit this. Hello world. Say hello Zonily. Yay! As you can see, it's already live within your screen. It's like hot reload functionality, and this is more evident on other like programming frameworks such as React Native and Flutter. And it's just something that's being adopted within the native development space as well. So let's go within the basics of SwiftUI. This right here, the right-hand side, is called the canvas. Sometimes it is also called the preview pane, the screen right here, because you see this is the preview. On the left side, we have this. This is your SwiftUI object. So this is the thing that's being generated in here as the screen. So for example, if I'm going to be removing this and just say color.red, it's going to be returning just a red screen. This right here is needed so it can preview the object, or rather the SwiftUI view here in the screen. So don't have to think about this. It's just here every time we generate a file. So it can be previewed within the preview pane or the canvas. So there are 4 basic things that I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to be adding a comment here. I'm going to be talking about text, image, and layout containers. So let's start with text. Just resume it so it can run. There you go. So once again, like earlier I said, once you edit this, it's going to be appearing there automatically. With SwiftUI, we have this concept that we call modifiers. So modifiers are methods that are within the view object that we can use to modify the view. Modifiers will modify the view. So for example, if I want to change the text color, I'm going to be saying the foreground color of the text will be color.blue. Once I change that, it's here, it's blue. Oops, I clicked it, that's why it became blue. Let's say it's going to be red. There you go, it's red. So what if I want to add a background color to the text? Oops. Say blue as well. So it's not necessarily that the screen is the whole text, because there is a concept for SwiftUI, and I'm going to be explaining it back the slides. There you go. So how SwiftUI actually works is that there is a parent view. So the parent view is this. Some body, some view, body. And whenever you add a child view, the child will choose within the coordinate whether or not it can fit within that. So this is the child, the text. So what it's saying here is that it can only exist within the bounds of the parent. And then the parent will place the child inside it, depending on how big the child is. So basically, the parent will propose a size. The child will check whether or not it can fit within that, and then the parent will respect the choice of the child that it will appear within this space, and then the child inside it will be placed. So go back. For example, when we're going to be saying modifiers, it's going to be actually affecting how the view is modified. So for example, if I'm going to be saying that the frame of this one is, say, 200 by 200, I'm going to be removing the alignment right there. So this is now a box of 200 and 200. And I said the color is blue right here. If I'm going to be removing this and say adding it here, the only object that will change is actually the text. So every time you add a modifier to a SwiftUI view, it's going to be creating a new object basically. So it's like putting layers over layers over layers. So for example, this text has now a background color of view. And this is this one, hello world. Now, since I added a frame, it added a 200 by 200 view behind that. So if, say, I add a new background color of color orange, the background color of that object is now orange. So if I add another frame behind it, say 250 by 250, oops, there's another object inside there, and let's just say I'm gonna call it color black. So that's basically the basics of SwiftUI. I'm going to be removing this color since it's annoying. And this one, white. There you go. So once again, since we're going to be, where's the Google Chrome? Since we're going to be using this UI, so let's start with stats. So we have layout containers. I'm going to be removing this. So for SwiftUI, there are a lot of layout containers we can use. We have HStack and then VStack. These are like around rows and columns. So if, for example, text, let's say Turtle Rock. And what's the other text again? It's Turtle Rock Joshua Tree National Park. So it's going to be saying an error here because I can't like put two objects within this because it's going to be accepting only one. So if we want to show Joshua Tree National Park beneath the Turtle Rock. So to do that, we can actually add an H stack. We can do that on multiple ways. So for example, we can just type right here H stack and then let it show right there. And then there you have it. There's an H stack. Another way to do that is by clicking Command plus click, then you click text, then you can actually just embed it in a H stack as well. There you go. Another way you can do it is, let's copy this. By using the preview pane. So when you click Command, click this object right here, you can actually see a lot of options that are being shown right here as well. So when you click this, say I embedded in an H stack. So now it's inside an H stack. The code here as well has been changed. So for example, I want to say, so the inspector, I want to say that its font is now large. It's larger now, so it's actually edited right here. So there are a lot of options that you can do for like developing. It depends on which one you prefer. But for me, I still prefer writing it down. So once again, let's use the Joshua Tree National Park. So the screen is showing these objects horizontally because they're an H stack. So if I want them to show like top to bottom, I'm just going to change it into a V stack and then there you go. But on our display earlier, we can see that these objects are like aligned on the right. So we can actually change that by using the alignment to leading. I'm going to keep removing this since these are optional objects as well. So there, it's now on the leading part. I'm actually going to be using this as a font of headline, subheadline. Now, there is another object right here. This is California. Actually, let me just take a screenshot of this one. And oh, yeah, we can do this as well. Now, we want to add California. So California is on the leftmost side. So we can actually just add another text, say California. But it's showing at the bottom. We want it to be shown on the rightmost side. So what we can actually do is just put this inside an H stack once again, since it's vertical. Then paste this here. But it's on the middle. So what we actually can do is just rearrange it once again. I'm going to be using H stack. I'm going to be putting it here, and then this right here. Inside them is the H stack. But I want them to be apart. So what we can see right now is they're still in the middle of the screen. So there is an object called spacer. So what it does, it basically just creates a space, and it's going to be fitting as much space as it can. So for example, if I add the spacer right here, our view will now be separated by a large space between them, because the spacer will take as much space as it can between two views. So we're going to be putting it in the H stack. So there you have it. But since there is you can see that there's a padding right here, we can just add a padding to the V stack. So let's add a modifier. Say padding. Say I am going to be adding a padding of 12. Yeah, there you go. Now let's talk about the image. This is a circle image. So let's create a new object. So oops. Say file, new, SwiftUI. File, new file. There you go. You're going to be clicking the SwiftUI file. Click next. Say it's a circle image. So whenever you create a new file, you have to make sure that this target is selected, because when you create it and this is not selected, Xcode will not be able to detect it. So let's create one. There you go, circle image. Let's put it here. Now we're going to be editing the circle image. So actually, to create an image, you just actually have to use image. It's that easy. So let's resume. So it's going to be showing an error because an image is supposed to have an initializer. So for example, the file name is some image. Try again. So it's not going to be appearing. So because we have no file within our asset catalog. So to add an image, you have to go to here, assets.xc assets, here. And then on our file earlier, this is where the resources came in. The turtle rock, it's the same one right there. So I'm just going to add it here. Going back to the turtle image. Now, since its name is just turtle rock, I can just copy this and then paste it right here. And then when I resume, you have to wait for a while. There you go. There you have it. You now have an image within your screen. So what's next? Since it's a circle, so we want it to be a circle. So we can actually just clip it. So for example, just clip shape. So we're going to provide a shape. Since the shape is a circle, we just say circle. There you have it. Oh, it's a circle, and there is an overlay here. So there is a white thingy, so we can just add an overlay once again. So we're going to be using an overlay with a view and a line width overlay. There you go. So once again, the overlay is just another circle. Oops. Overlay is just another circle, but it's gonna be black. Why is it black? Because we have to edit it as to add a stroke. Let's say, there you go. I'm saying the color of this one is colored at gray, and the line width is around, say, 4. So as you can notice right here, there is now, let's change it to another color so we can all see it. There is the overlay, that's the white thing. So since it's white, I'm just going to add white right there. And I think there's a shadow behind it. Yeah, there's a shadow behind it. So let's add a shadow. A radius of 10. So there you go. You have an image, circle image. Now, how do we go about adding it back to the content view? We can just put this in an circle image. Oops. It needs to be on the middle, so I'm going to be creating another VStack. Then I put the circle image right there. So there you have it. There's your circle image. And behind it, actually, there's a map. So to add that, maps are not available yet with SwiftUI. So we have to leverage the use of UIKit. UIKit is when we're going to be developing with storyboards or like view controllers. So for example, how do we do that with SwiftUI? Once again, we create file new, we create SwiftUI view. Let's say this is the map view. Let's resume so we can see it. We have to import UIKit. So we will have access to UI objects from UIKit. Now, there's this thing that's not a change when you're going to be creating files, rather views that came from UIKit. So it's not going to be view anymore. It needs to be UI view representable. So what this means is that the UI view can be represented within Swift UI. So this is now an object that's not needed in here, and it's going to be asking for a few protocols that needs to be implemented. So when we click, let's go back. You can click command, click here, and then jump to definition. You can actually see what are the objects that are needed in this object. So for example, I'm going to be using this. Let's remove the comments because I don't need those. Comments. And I'm going to hide this so we can see the view. So it's going to be asking that you here make UI view return a data type. So for this one, we're going to be returning the MK map view, which is from MapKit. Actually, we can remove this as well. And then this is going to be context. This is going to be context. Since this is an MK map view, we're going to be saying this is an MK map view. This as well, since this is the generic type. And then once we resume it, it's supposed to be, oops, this is supposed to be that 0. So let's try again. There we have it. There's a map. So basically, this is a map. So it's not displaying anything yet because there's nothing. We haven't supplied any data yet. So let's supply a data within this. So let's say coordinate. Contains a longitude and a latitude. So I guess this one is, I'm just going to copy this one from the tutorial since I haven't memorized it. So this is the coordinate. This is basically where in the map your object will appear. And then let's create a span. Let span. It's going to be accepting a latitude delta, which is this one, and a longitude delta. So it's basically saying how big of this, how big from a part of the map are you going to show from a specific coordinate. So for this one, let's just say 2.0. Excuse me. Allergies. And then region. So region is where in the map. So here we're going to be passing a center. The center is where in the screen, so where in the map. So that's the coordinate. And once again, the span is how large you're going to be viewing from the map. So we're going to be passing the map. Now, since this is the UI view, since it's actually just returning, this is actually being returned here when it needed to be updated. So when we call UI view that set region, set region, we're just going to be passing the region here. And of course, we want it to be animated so it looks good. We have to press. Now we have to wait. So since we're on preview, we will not be able to see anything from the screen. We actually need to run it. So we have to run it from here. It's going to be animating in a while. Let's wait for it. Come on, Xcode. There you go. So yeah, there's Joshua Tree National Park. So it's going to be, so if I change this to say 134, it's going to be changing to another location as well. And I'm not sure if there's a 134 by negative 116. Hello? There doesn't seem to be that location. So let's put it back. Now we can once again add it back to the screen. So let's go back to our content view. Content view. Since we already added the circle image here, we can just add map view right here. Ta-da! There you have it. It's as easy as that. But we have a problem. So on our screen, the Turtle Rock image is centered. So what we can actually do is just move it. So first of all, let's set the frame of this object. So normally it's just around 300. Height is 300. Don't need the alignment, so it's going to be just 300. For the preview, I think we can change this. Let's have it like that. So let's move the circle image. So we want the image to move upwards by, let's say, 130 pixels. So it's actually centered. So let's add an offset of, say, negative 130. It's negative 130. So offset of y. So even though it moved, there is still, the object is still here because the value of your, it's just, how do I explain this? It's just that the view has been, the layer has been put up, but still the view is still down below. So you have to add, once again, a padding at the bottom of it. Of the bottom, let's say it's also negative 130. And since it's going to be supposed to be at the top, it's still centered right here. Let's just add a spacer down below. Ta-da! So once we run it, it's supposed to be okay now. There you have it. So I think we now have finished our layout. Let's go back to the presentation. What's next? So in conclusion, so where I talked about the development of pros and cons for iOS, requirements to build an iOS app, Swift programming language and your first Xcode project using SwiftUI. So I think for this one, we can now go on with question and answer. And there are a lot of comments actually. Mhm. Hello, Luis. You can come back now. So, Ankate, hi, good evening. Do you normally, how do I show this? How do I show this? Okay, so let's first answer this question by Mark Bermillo. Do I normally do pure programming built UI using auto layout or storyboards in our company? So, me personally, I develop application using both. So it's either so this one is using SwiftUI. So SwiftUI is more programmatically. So it's like I'm editing this one within by using the code itself. But when I'm using UI kit, I usually do a combination of both. If I can develop everything by code, sometimes I will. But when we're like talking about you're going to be developing with your teammates and not all of your teammates are going to be well versed in developing programmatically, so you have to develop in such a way na you can still use programmatically and by storyboards. So for that, what we do is that we have one storyboard per view controller. Uh,
Okay.
there's a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot of questions.
Okay,
I
guys. So
must.
don't forget, we're at the end of uh, the session. So if you want to ask anything to Z, wag lang siguro personal, but related to the talk, please comment it in uh, in the video, sa comment section sa video, and we'll try to get to you. Okay, let's go through it together. You were able to answer one already, Z, right?
Yeah. Actually, I need to pee.
Oh, okay,
I
that's
I
okay. So I'll
sure.
just talk for a little bit and for a moment. Okay, guys. So again, thank you so much for taking this time to join us tonight, and it's been wonderful. We have a lot. I would say a lot of people watching us tonight. So don't forget to also like our page. Like or follow our page so that at least you get notified if we have anything scheduled. And just a few changes for next week. So we will try to. I'm gonna experiment on the schedule of our sessions. So we will do one on Friday. So for Friday, we will talk about VR design with one of the participants of the recently held, or it was held last January, so we can say it's recently. Um, Hack Reality event. So they will share to us their project, their thesis project, and talk to us more about how you can start a career in VR design or game design. So that's David Pacheco, and the Yellow Boat is the game that they developed for their thesis or their capstone, and he will talk to us about that on Friday. So that's Friday 5 p.m. And on Saturday, next week, we will also have Christopher, Christopher David of Veer Immersive Technologies, who will talk to us more about developing games in VR and how VR is adapting or helping people during these times, new normal and all that. And I think there are a lot of applications for VR, specifically for learning, since it gives you that in the moment experience. So Christopher David will talk to us about that from VR Pilipinas or VRPH. So you can also follow their page or their community, join their community on Facebook. That's VRPH. Okay, so we have Z back to answer a few questions. Okay, let's check. Okay, so which one do you want to do, Z?
So I'll just go on the like comments, but I'll try to answer them one by one. So
Okay,
another
good.
one here is Ankate. So she or he is asking what language these are parang ano magandang pag-aralan niya. So it depends on your resource. So for example, if you have a Windows PC, maybe you can try web development using JavaScript or Android development. It depends on the power of your PC. So if you have like a very powerful PC, maybe you can try under development. But if your PC is not very powerful, so you can actually try starting with web development, since web development has a lower tawag dito, requirement for development. Oh, and the next one I see here is, hi, good evening. Why would you choose native iOS instead of cross-platform such as React Native, Ionic, or Flutter? So when it comes to developing for mobile applications, when it comes to performance, nothing beats the performance of writing a native application, because when you are writing a native application, you are developing in a development environment that was developed by the developer, Apple or Google. So yeah, there's a lot of developing that's happening right there. So what I'm trying to say is, you are using the development environment that is given to you by the manufacturer. So it's going to be a lot faster. And there are a lot of benchmarks out there that is showing that, for example, iOS Swift is faster than React Native, or Objective C is faster than Swift. So basically, it's all a rabbit hole going where the most performance will be. When, for example, it depends on what you're doing. So if you're going to be doing something like Facebook or Instagram, you don't need a lot of heavy computing for that. So you can opt to use cross-platform frameworks such as React Native, Flutter. For example, if you're going to be building an VR application or an augmented reality application, I would say that you still move to native, because developing via native is still faster because you have like better support for hardware. And that's where it's going to be.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
all a case of spaces, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. So uh, there's really value in learning to code natively as well, so that you don't get used to just. Um, so I mean, what I'm trying to say is, it's good to be tech agnostic as well, to be able to do several things. Um, and that's a very interesting question. Thank you so much, Joseph Tandingan. Yeah. And let me browse through this, Z, just to make sure we're able to answer the most list. Like, for those questions that we're able to answer tonight, we'll definitely reach out to you, naman. Okay, this one. Is Swift interpreted like Python? I'm not sure if you were able
Ah,
to answer
yeah.
this earlier.
So Swift is actually a compiled language. So there's the thing about mobile development is that, for example, every time you need to run it, you have to wait. So it's going to be compiling. So for example, for larger projects, give or take, say, a social media application, sometimes you have to wait for around 10 to 15 minutes, depending on your specs of your device. Even though your device is like, say, you're using a 16-inch MacBook Pro with 16 gigs of RAM and an i7 core, you will still have to wait, say, 10 minutes if your application is very large and you're using a lot of dependencies for analytics and stuff. So that's one of the caveats of native development. So if you don't like to wait, you have no choice for native development.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you for that. And if you have any follow up question, please don't hesitate to uh, comment. And I think
Do
like
your
students are listening to us now. Yeah. So guys, don't forget your reaction paper, so you know who you are. Um, and also, we have here a question from Mark.
Will there be any repercussions if an app is published or built using an app Xcode app installed on a machine using a Hackintosh Mac OS? Okay, so this is actually a controversial issue, but you can definitely build iOS apps using a Hackintosh. But if you're going to be deploying to the App Store, I would rather suggest na you just develop your app using your Hackintosh and then use some kind of CI service for that CI service to build the installer for you to upload to the App Store. Because with Hackintosh, there are sometimes code signing that can go wrong, and your application might be what you would say rejected, and you might be blacklisted because they detected that you were using a Hackintosh. So with the thing that I was saying earlier for like CI services, there are actually, for example, if you're using an open source project, you can use GitHub Actions that can run Jenkins as well. For others, there are like Code Magic, Bitrise, and there's also a service called Mac in Cloud. Basically, what you're doing is you're going to be renting a Mac that is running on a server somewhere. There's a server farm in the US, so you'll be using their MacBooks right there. Actually, it's I think a Mac Pro, not a MacBook. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. And Mark, if you have any additional question or a follow-up question, uh, feel free to comment it as well. So, may evaluation po ba? So this is
I think this is a
yeah,
reply
maybe
to
we can.
other
Yeah, we can probably give you one. And let me see. So okay, so here from Bea, Bea May Bellarmino. Thank you so much for the question. Hi, I just want to ask if what processor is better to be used, Intel or AMD in developing like Swift or Flutter. So I think in your experience, Z in developing for uh, Flutter, what would you recommend?
So I want to develop iOS apps, or rather, so I want to develop as much platforms as I can. So, for example, if I'll be using Flutter and I want to develop applications in Swift, I will still be using a MacBook. And the problem with
Mm-hmm.
MacBooks is that they are, what do you call it? Parang restricted sila on their hardware. So, Apple only has contracts with Intel for the processors, so you can't use Ryzen for developing Apple applications.
Mm-hmm.
Even with Hackintosh, there is a very, very low support for low, what do you call, driver support for Ryzen or AMD. And if you are going to be searching for that, I would rather suggest not, because it's going to be masakit sa ulo if you're going to be like you're going to be doing more of fixing the OS itself rather than playing around with your Hackintosh.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the develop the processor that will be used can only be Intel.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Bea, and thank you Z for that answer. And yeah, it really is a very good investment, I think. So for students out there, you can start with what device you have, and maybe in the future you can think about investing in getting the right device, like a MacBook, or if you really want to develop for iOS. And I think I really also want to ask you, Z, for all the students out there and for all the professionals, how is the job market for iOS developers like in the Philippines? I think this is what I want to do for the upcoming sessions. Talk about um, the career side of tech. So based on your experience, Z.
Okay. So for iOS developers, it's basically there are only a few of us. So I mean, there are not a surplus of iOS devs here in the Philippines. So parang when example, I'm going to be applying for a new job somewhere. Sometimes when I go there, I'll be like, oh, I know that guy. Uy, pre, basta.
Mhm.
And I'll go to another company. There's an interview, and I'll see another iOS dev. Oh, I know that guy too. Parang so basically, since we have a community, Swift.ph, most iOS devs inside this community know each other. So it's like there are only a few of us that are very much knowing where we are.
Okay, so that means I think the demand as well is very
Yeah,
high,
it's very high.
especially now that I think organizations are trying to transition their business online as much as possible and as efficiently as they can. And so based on my experience in Recruit Day as well, there has been uh, an onslaught of demand for mobile developers. So there's really a lot of opportunities for you guys, to find a career in this field. And would you know all of them, Z? It feels like, and then believe me when I say that the network of Z is well, Z knows a lot of people in development, especially if you're part of a community. So when he says na konti lang ang mga developers, definitely konti lang din as compared to the other technologies. So thank you so much for that, Z. And so guys, for all the questions, maybe we can just reply to your comments later, so that we're able to address everyone. But for today, I would like to thank everyone for joining us. And don't forget, for Zonily, you can definitely follow him on Medium and view his articles. So do you have tutorials as well, Z? Sorry.
So I write about development. So parang basically specific topics on Medium, but tutorials
Mm-hmm.
not yet. But I'm
Okay.
planning, but not yet right now.
Yeah,
So
definitely in the future. Yep.
guys, don't forget to leave me a feedback of how I did on my on my talk, so I can definitely improve my talks in the future. So you can check using the QR code or just open the link, the bit.ly. So here,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And Z can leave the link as well in the comment section so that everyone gets access to that.
Mm-hmm.
And for Twitter, Zonily James. Zonily is following a lot of iOS developers and developers in general. So you can connect with him on follow him on Twitter so that you learn more and you'll be part of this global community of developers. And GitHub, Kuya Z. Yeah. And
Yeah, I
Swift,
wanted
yeah,
to
Kuya
change
Z. Okay. All right. So let's not talk about. May questions sana ako about why Kuya Z, pero
my
siguro
name. Zonily, it's so hard to pronounce. Sabi ng mga college friends ko, Suzy na lang daw.
yeah, tamad lang talaga yung mga college friends mo siguro. And for Swift PH as well, Swift.ph, and then there's a community on Facebook. You can join them there. And again, there's an Apple or an iOS event. Z, just to
Yeah,
remind everyone,
WWDC. So
WWDC.
here we go. So if you want to join our local watch party that is being hosted by Michi, so you can just go to WWDC Watch that party. I'm going to be adding this link in the comments as well, so you can check. So basically, these most of these developers are some of them I know. For example, I know Josh, I know Mark, I know Joash, I know some of these people are like from foreign lands na, so I don't know them. But for the local ones, most definitely I know them.
Mhm. Okay, so guys, that's a free event, and it'd be good to be part of that, and that will definitely help you in your journey to learning iOS development. So that's it for us today. Don't forget recruitday.com if you want to refer or apply for a new job. And the best thing about that is that you can browse through the many jobs at recruitday.com, and if you know anyone who would be interested in those opportunities, you can refer them. And if they are hired successfully, then you get a referral bonus. And for July, we will have further into design. So we will have speakers from different fields of design to share their experience and expertise. And don't forget to like the page and continue checking our community page as well.
Thank you.
Right. So thank you so much and see you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Hmm.